Some people walk into a room and feel everything. The tremor behind someone's smile, the silence between words, the sadness hiding beneath laughter. They notice when affection is obligation, when confidence is fear, when success is just a mask of exhaustion. It is a wound that never heals, because once you've seen the truth behind the play, you can't go back to pretending. You can't laugh at jokes built on pain, or find comfort in illusions you once loved. And so, you start to drift away from noise, away from surface, into a quiet space where everything hurts and everything is clear. Awareness, when it cuts too deep, is both light and blade. It opens your eyes, but it also opens your heart to every hidden sorrow. At first, awareness feels like a kind of miracle. The moment when the lights suddenly come on after a lifetime spent wandering in the dark. Everything seems sharper, cleaner, more defined. You can finally see the shapes that once scared you in the shadows. You think, this is it. This is truth. You walk lighter, speak softer, feel wiser. You imagine that awareness will bring peace, that clarity will save you. But then you start to realize something strange. The light is not gentle. It doesn't only illuminate what is beautiful. It also reveals what you were never ready to see. It exposes the cracks in the walls you built, the dust on the shelves you ignored, the decay in the corners you once thought were safe. And the more light there is, the more flaws you see. Every detail becomes unbearable in its precision. You cannot unsee what you've seen. You begin to see through people, their masks, their trembling insecurities, their carefully curated smiles. You notice the way someone laughs to hide discomfort, the way another person flatters to feel important, the subtle tremor in the voice of someone pretending to be in control. You see the shadow behind every performance, and then, inevitably, you see the performance within yourself. That is when the pain begins. You realize how much of your life was scripted. The way you speak to please others. The way you pursue goals you were taught to desire. The way you measure worth through comparison, applause, and belonging. You see how most conversations are not exchanges of truth, but of masks. You see how many dreams are recycled from other people's expectations, parents, teachers, society, the endless chorus of voices telling you what life should look like. You used to belong to that world. You played your part well. You laughed at the right moments, competed for validation, believed that fitting in meant being alive. But once you step out of the illusion, you cannot go back. You stand there, watching the play continue without you, and it feels unreal. The applause that once excited you now sounds hollow, mechanical, like rain hitting metal. You hear it echo and realize it was never for you, only for the role you played. Awareness strips away your costume and leaves you naked before existence. You feel both liberated and lost. You understand that the smiles, the rituals, the promises of happiness were all fragments of a shared hallucination. And yet, it hurts to let them go. Because illusion, for all its falseness, was warm. It was home. You start to notice how few people truly look at each other, how most only see reflections of their own needs. You see love mixed with fear, kindness mixed with pride, spirituality mixed with ego. You realize that even goodness, when built on illusion, becomes performance. You want to close your eyes again, but the curtain has already fallen. The light doesn't turn off. It keeps burning, and now it's everywhere. And so you walk through life differently. You see the same faces, the same streets, the same words, but they no longer hold the same meaning. The world has not changed. Your sight has. You are haunted by the subtle dishonesty of everything. How people smile when they want to cry. How they promise forever while planning escape. How they pray for peace while nurturing war inside. You used to join them. Now you just watch silently. Awareness does not make you superior. It makes you raw. It takes away the protective layers that once kept you numb. It leaves you vulnerable to everything: joy, pain, sorrow, beauty, all at once. You feel too much, see too much, know too much. It's like standing in front of a mirror that reflects not your face, but your soul. Every flaw, every lie, every fear, there, staring back at you. You begin to understand why most people choose to stay asleep, because sleep is soft. Ignorance is merciful. Illusion is comforting. But truth demands everything. It takes tears, exposes, destroys. It doesn't caress. It cuts. Yet, strangely, within that pain lies a quiet kind of grace. Because what awareness destroys, it destroys only because it was false. You start to see beauty in a different way, not in perfection, but in honesty. A face lined with pain becomes beautiful because it is real. A moment of silence between strangers becomes sacred because it is unguarded. You no longer chase light for comfort. You accept it as fire. Awareness, you realize, is not a gentle dawn. It is a wildfire. It consumes every false thing until only truth remains. And in that truth, you stand alone. No masks, no applause, no illusions left to hold on to. Just the raw pulse of existence, fragile, trembling, and infinitely alive. Seeing deeply is beautiful, but it burns everything false to ashes. And when the fire finally settles, what's left is not destruction, but clarity, the kind that hurts and heals at the same time. When awareness grows too sharp, something inside you begins to fall silent. It's not a decision, not an act of will. It's more like an instinctive retreat, a soul remembering where it came from. Noise, once thrilling, now feels heavy. Conversations that used to fill your evenings now leave you empty. The laughter around you echoes strangely, like voices in another language. You start drifting, not out of disdain, but out of exhaustion. You've seen too much, felt too deeply, understood too clearly, and clarity, for all its light, can feel like exile. You stop explaining yourself because you finally understand that words cannot cross certain distances. There are realms of perception that language cannot reach. When you speak of what you've seen, the illusions, the masks, the quiet truth underneath, you're met with confusion, even hostility. People look at you as if you've changed, as if you've lost something essential. But the truth is, you've simply stopped playing along. You've stepped off the stage, and the audience no longer knows how to react. They whisper that you've become strange, detached, cold. Yet deep down, you know you're not cold. You're just quiet. The urge to defend what you see fades away. You no longer argue because you realize that truth doesn't need protection. It stands on its own, indifferent to belief or denial. You stop trying to convince anyone because awakening cannot be transferred, only discovered. So you let people think what they will. You let them have their stories, their dramas, their noise. You smile gently, knowing they too will awaken when the time is right. This detachment, however, comes with a price. You begin to feel like a ghost moving through a world that doesn't see you anymore. You attend gatherings but feel absent. You talk, but your words float above you like smoke. There's a subtle grief in realizing that the language of your heart no longer translates to the world you once belonged to. You are there, yet elsewhere, suspended between two realities, one of awareness. At first, this isolation terrifies you. You mistake it for loneliness, for loss. You try to reach back, to feel the warmth of old connections, to laugh at the jokes that once amused you, to believe in the stories you used to chase. But it's like trying to fit back into a dream after you've woken up. No matter how hard you try, it doesn't feel real anymore. The comfort is gone. The spell has been broken. Gradually, the fear subsides. You begin to sit with the silence. You breathe with it. You notice that loneliness, when faced directly, begins to transform. It softens. It becomes spacious, almost alive. It's no longer an enemy, but a teacher, one that whispers truths too subtle for company to hear. You start to find beauty in simple things again. The sound of rain on a window, the way sunlight falls through dust, the pulse of your own breathing. These moments, unnoticed by most, become sacred. They are reminders that peace doesn't come from belonging to the crowd, but from belonging to the moment. And yet, even as peace grows, there's still a faint ache, the ache of seeing clearly. You see the world continue its frantic dance, people chasing meaning, fighting shadows, pretending to know. You no longer hate it, you no longer wish to change it. You simply see it, the endless cycle of seeking and forgetting. You watch with the same quiet compassion you once reserved for yourself. Sometimes, when laughter fills the room, you smile too. Not because you're part of it, but because you understand it now. You see the innocence behind the illusions, the way everyone clings to distraction just to avoid the silence. And for the first time, you stop judging. You realize you once did the same. The line between awake and asleep begins to blur, replaced by tenderness. The world keeps spinning, noisy, chaotic, beautiful in its blindness, but you've tuned yourself to a different frequency. You live slower now. You listen more. You carry silence within you like a secret garden. People may call it distance, but to you, it's presence. Okay. They may call it emptiness, but to you, it's fullness. Clarity isolates, yes, but it also liberates. It frees you from needing to be understood, from performing, from belonging where you no longer fit. It leaves you standing in stillness while the world rushes by. And in that stillness, you discover something rare. Peace that doesn't depend on approval, and love that doesn't demand recognition. You don't hate humanity. You simply see it too clearly to stay blind. You see its beauty, its confusion, its longing. And in that vision, you feel both sorrow and serenity, the bittersweet grace of one who walks through life awake, unseen and unafraid. In the quiet that follows the storm of awareness, something subtle begins to shift inside you. The silence that once felt heavy starts to breathe. The loneliness that once ached begins to soften around the edges. You begin to realize that seeing deeply was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to dissolve you, to melt away everything in you that was rigid, reactive, and afraid. Awareness, you discover, is not punishment. It's purification. It burns away what is false, not because life is cruel, but because truth demands space to grow. Slowly, you stop fighting the world. You stop labeling everything as right or wrong, asleep or awake, true or false. Instead, you begin to see, not just observe, but see with understanding. You look at the masks people wear, the laughter too loud, the confidence too rehearsed, the kindness that trembles at its own fragility, and you longer judge. You start to sense what lies beneath. The liar, you realize, lies not out of malice, but fear. Truth would shatter the fragile world he built to survive. The arrogant one, who walks with his chin high and eyes full of dismissal, only does so because he feels invisible. The angry one, loud, defensive, unpredictable, is just someone who has never learned how to cry. One by one, your judgments fall away. The need to fix, to correct, to teach, all dissolve in the warmth of understanding. You no longer look at others as puzzles to solve, but as reflections of the same wounded consciousness that breathes through you. You start to notice how everyone, the cruel, the kind, the silent, the broken, is doing the best they can with the level of awareness they have. The world is no longer divided between enlightened and asleep. It's a vast garden where every soul is growing at its own pace, under its own light. That realization changes everything. Suffering no longer disgusts you, it humbles you. You begin to see pain not as something to escape, but as something sacred, a universal language that all beings share. Pain, you realize, is not a curse. It's the thread that weaves humanity together. You start to see beauty in the tears of others, in the trembling of their voices, in the silent battles they fight within. You see yourself in them, your old fears, your old ignorance, your desperate need to be seen. You can no longer separate your story from theirs. And so, compassion is born. But not the shallow compassion of pity or moral superiority. This is a compassion that rises naturally, like breath. It doesn't try to save. It simply understands. It sits quietly beside suffering, holding it without judgment. It whispers, "I know. I've been there, too." You no longer need to protect yourself from the pain of others because you recognize it as your own. As awareness ripens into tenderness, your heart begins to open again. But it's different. This time, softer, wiser, grounded in reality. You no longer love because you want something in return. You love because you see. You see the madness, the confusion, the endless cycles of fear and desire, and yet you smile. Because you know that behind it all is the same spark, the same longing for peace, the same divine essence, learning to awaken. In that seeing, you are reborn. Not as someone enlightened above the world, but as someone deeply human within it. You stop standing apart and start standing among. You walk through the chaos without being consumed by it. You speak with honesty, but without the need to be right. You forgive, not because it's noble, but because you finally understand. Forgiveness, you realize, is not letting someone else off the hook. It's letting yourself out of the cage. And through this rebirth, love itself changes form. It's no longer the romanticized, aching kind that clings and breaks. It's spacious. It breathes. It allows. Love, when born from clarity, no longer hurts because it doesn't seek to possess or control. It simply is. It sees madness and smiles softly. It sees imperfection and calls it beautiful. It sees brokenness and calls it holy. You begin to live with this gentle wisdom. You walk through life with open eyes and an open heart. You no longer need to protect yourself from the world because you no longer see it as an enemy. Every person becomes a teacher, every moment a mirror. You watch the world's pain, its drama, its noise, and inside, something peaceful whispers, "I understand." And that whisper, that quiet understanding, is the sound of your rebirth. Awareness is both the greatest blessing and the heaviest burden a human heart can carry. It is the flame that reveals, and the same flame that scorches. It shatters illusions, yes, but in doing so, it destroys the very walls that once sheltered you. It opens your eyes to truth, but truth is not soft. It has edges that cut. It gives you clarity, but clarity does not comfort. It takes away ignorance, and with it, belonging. You start to see life as it is, stripped bare of all decoration, and that nakedness, at first, feels unbearable. The paradox of awareness is that it liberates and wounds in the same breath. It tears the curtain and lets you see the machinery behind the stage, the pulleys, the false lights, the trembling actors hiding behind their masks. And yet, even as illusion collapses, you can't help but feel awe at the design. You see how beautiful even the lie was, how earnestly people believed in their parts, how sincerely they tried to make sense of their suffering. You begin to realize that truth and illusion were never enemies. One was simply the shadow of the other. Awareness is not kind to innocence. Every insight costs you something you cannot reclaim, a layer of comfort, a piece of naivety, a sliver of faith. You trade simplicity for depth, certainty for mystery. You no longer have the luxury of blind hope, but you gain something pure, quiet understanding. You learn that the world doesn't need to be perfect to be sacred. You learn that beauty is not the absence of pain, but the grace that moves through it. To see deeply is to be torn open, but in that tearing, light enters. Awareness doesn't protect you from heartbreak, it magnifies it. You begin to feel more, not less. You sense the suffering of others as if it were your own. You can no longer look away from injustice, cruelty, or indifference. You weep more easily. You break more often. Yet, strangely, you also heal faster because your heart no longer resists the truth of impermanence. You understand that everything, even pain, is a form of movement, a dance of becoming and endlessly repeating. At times, awareness feels like standing in a storm without shelter. The winds of truth rip through everything you once believed. You look around and see others laughing under false skies, and part of you envies them. How simple it must be to believe without questioning, to feel without observing, to live without seeing. But you cannot go back. Once the veil has been lifted, no amount of pretending will bring it down again. And though the world remains chaotic, at least you are no longer lost in its noise. You start to see beauty differently, not in perfection, but in honesty. A wrinkled face becomes poetry. A failing sunset feels holy. You watch the world breaking and mending itself endlessly and understand. This is what life has always been, fragile, fleeting, yet divine in its persistence. You no longer seek meaning in permanence. You find it in the very act of dissolving. The falling leaf, the dying star, the final breath, each becomes a revelation. Awareness is like a candle. It burns itself to give light. And every time you glimpse truth, another layer of yourself melts away. You lose pieces of who you thought you were, until all that remains is clarity itself, raw, luminous, infinite. The pain of awareness is that it never stops burning. The grace of awareness is that it never stops illuminating. And so, you carry both the ache and the light. You learn to live with contradictions, joy and grief, love and detachment, knowing and not knowing. The more awake you become, the more you realize that life was never meant to be understood, only witnessed. You have seen through the curtain. You have met the actor behind the role, and he is you. You understand now that the play was never a deception, only a mirror reflecting consciousness back to itself. When you look at life now, you no longer crave perfection. You see it as it truly is, messy, tragic, fleeting, yet achingly beautiful. And though awareness may have broken your heart 1,000 times, it has also made that heart vast enough to hold the whole world within it. When you finally stop fighting awareness, when you stop cursing the weight of knowing and simply let it exist, something extraordinary happens. The curse begins to dissolve. The same vision that once isolated you now becomes your bridge back to the world. You start moving through life differently, slower, softer, lighter. You no longer walk with the heavy footsteps of someone trying to fix everything or prove anything. You walk like the wind, present, unseen, touching everything but claiming nothing. Acceptance is the quiet turning point. You realize that awareness was never meant to make you superior or separate. It was meant to make you free. And freedom, you learn, is not loud or dramatic. It's a stillness inside that cannot be shaken by the noise outside. You stop trying to save people from their illusions because you finally see that illusions are part of their journey. You no longer force truth into unready hearts. You wait, you trust, you stay silent when needed. Your wisdom no longer demands to be heard. You begin to speak less and listen more, not out of restraint, but reverence. You listen to people's stories, their contradictions, their confusion, and you no longer rush to correct them. You hear the fear beneath their anger, the longing beneath their pride, the love buried under their pain. And you realize that behind every human mask is the same trembling child who just wants to be safe. This understanding changes how you move in the world. You no longer meet aggression with defense or ignorance with judgment. You meet it with compassion, with patience, with the quiet knowing that every soul is unfolding in its own divine time. Love also changes shape. It loses its claws, its need to possess or control. You love not because you expect, but because you overflow. You no longer love to fill an emptiness. You love because emptiness itself has become sacred. You can hold someone without clinging, let them go without resentment, care without attachment. Your love becomes a mirror, gentle, honest, and free. And in that freedom, you realize love was never meant to be a cage. It was meant to be the wind that passes through open hands, helping others changes too. You stop trying to save everyone because you finally understand the difference between helping and rescuing. You can extend your hand without carrying their weight. You can offer light without forcing anyone to look. You no longer confuse compassion with interference. You know now that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not to protect someone from their pain, but to stand quietly beside them while they face it. You stop fixing, start loving. You stop teaching, start embodying. You stop seeking and begin simply being. Awareness stops being a burden. It becomes breath flowing through you like wind through leaves, invisible but alive. You no longer hold on to insights like possessions. They come, they go. You let them. You live as someone who knows that even wisdom must die to make space for new seeing. You move through days without the constant pressure to be profound. You can be ordinary and yet fully awake within that ordinariness. You can wash dishes, walk under rain, smile at a stranger, and in those moments you feel the entire universe moving quietly through you. You also stop trying to change the world. You understand that real change doesn't come from noise or rebellion. It comes from presence, from how you treat the next person you meet, from how you breathe when things fall apart. You stop spreading ideas and start transmitting stillness. Wherever you go, you carry that calm like a fragrance. You don't argue, you don't convince, you simply exist as a space of peace. And the world, without realizing, adjusts around you. You begin to see every broken person, every wounded heart, every lost soul as a mirror reflecting the same light that moves through you. The arrogance of separation melts away. You see that no one is truly awake or asleep. There are only different stages of remembering. You see that even confusion has a divine order, even chaos has its rhythm. You smile not because everything is fine, but because you've made peace with not knowing. You no longer need answers. You've found comfort in the mystery itself. And so you move through life with a light touch, unburdened, unarmored, unafraid. You can laugh again, not the laughter of denial, but the laughter of freedom. You can cry, not from despair, but from tenderness. You can love this imperfect world without needing to fix it. Because now you understand nothing was ever broken. It was all just unfolding. That is the quiet grace of awareness. When you stop resisting it, the curse turns into light. What once burned now warms. What once isolated now connects. And as you stand in the gentle flow of this understanding, you finally realize to live with awareness is not to rise above life, but to dance within it. Lightly, freely, silently. The deeper you see, the softer you become. It sounds paradoxical, but it's the quiet truth that awareness eventually leads you to. In the beginning, seeing deeply made you sharp, critical, detached, raw. You cut through illusions like a blade. But as time passes, the edge begins to round. The blade becomes a mirror. You no longer want to slice the world open to reveal its truth. You want to hold it gently, to understand why it hides. True awareness doesn't separate, it unites. It doesn't make you higher than others. It dissolves the very notion of others. You begin to sense that all things, even the broken and the lost, are connected by invisible threads of the same light, stretching across the fabric of existence. You stop asking, why are people like this? And start whispering, we are all learning through different wounds. You see that cruelty often grows from pain, arrogance from insecurity, greed from fear. The world is not filled with evil. It's filled with wounded children wearing adult faces. And you, too, are one of them. That realization breaks the last illusion of separation. The war between us and them ends quietly inside your heart. Compassion takes its place. Not the kind of compassion that pities or condescends, but the kind that sees clearly and still chooses love. Awareness does break you violently, completely, but in the cracks, light gathers. You realize that breaking was never a mistake. It was a design. A vessel must shatter before it can pour. A seed must split before it can grow. The old self, built on ignorance, pride, and fear, had to crumble so that something larger could flow through. You stop mourning the person you used to be. You start honoring the lessons that death of innocence brought. Every fracture, every loss, every ache became the entry point for a deeper seeing. You stand now on the silent stage of life. The noise has dimmed, the lights have softened. You no longer feel like an actor lost in the script. You've stepped beyond the story, and yet you love it more than ever. You watch the play unfold, the joy, the heartbreak, the deceit, the redemption, and you see its strange perfection. You no longer wish to rewrite it. You only wish to witness it well. You understand that everyone, including you, is both actor and audience, dreamer and dream. This is the quiet awakening that no one talks about, the moment you realize that awareness is not about conquering illusion, but embracing it. The illusion was never the enemy. It was the stage upon which truth could perform. The chaos, the lies, the misunderstandings, they all belonged to the same divine choreography. Without them, there would be no growth, no tenderness, no recognition of beauty. You see, that darkness was never absence of light, but light in another form. A teacher disguised as pain, a shadow revealing the shape of something brighter. The more you see, the less you judge. The more you know, the less you speak. You become like water, transparent, gentle, adapting to everything, yet bound to nothing. You learn to move through the world without resistance. The laughter of a stranger, the tears of a child, the anger of a friend, all touch you, but none disturb your stillness. You no longer divide experiences into good or bad, sacred or profane. You see that all of them are part of one great unfolding, each necessary in its timing, each complete in its imperfection. Awareness no longer feels like standing apart from life. It feels like dissolving into it. You breathe, and the world breathes with you. You walk, and existence walks through you. The boundaries between you and everything else begin to blur. You start to feel a strange intimacy with all that exists: the sky, the dust, the noise, the silence. Everything belongs. Everything fits. Perhaps this is what awareness truly is. Not the end of illusion, but the beginning of understanding. It's not an escape from the human story, but a return to it with open eyes and an open heart. You understand now that awakening was never meant to take you out of the play, but to teach you how to love it while knowing it's a play. So you stand there, on the silent stage, no longer the actor lost in fear, no longer the seeker chasing truth. Just awareness, resting in itself, watching the drama of existence unfold with tender amusement. The curtain hasn't fallen. The play goes on. But now you see it all, the light and the shadow, the laughter and the grief, and you whisper softly, it was all sacred. It always was. Have you ever seen something so true, so raw, that it changed the way you could see forever? A truth that didn't free you, but broke you open, quietly, painfully, beautifully. There are moments in life when awareness arrives uninvited, and once it enters, nothing looks the same again. You can't go back to pretending. You can't unknow what you know. You simply learn to carry it gently, like fire cupped in your hands. So I ask you, do you believe awareness is a blessing or a burden? Is it a light that guides you or a flame that burns? Maybe it's both, a paradox that teaches us how to see without losing heart, how to love without illusion. If this story resonates with your soul, if you, too, are learning to live with eyes open and heart soft, then stay. This is the silent stage, a place for those who no longer seek to escape the noise, but to see through it. Subscribe, not to learn, not to follow, but to remember what you already are. Not to be taught, but to awaken.